Okay, go. He's gone out again.
Well, like I said, we're just working out the bugs today.
Yes, yes, try to do that. Dawood. Okay, I think he's back again. What's the problem? Drag.
Am I audible?
Yeah, you're audible now, so go ahead.
Okay. Good day, everyone, and welcome to Rockcity Global Discourse. This is the maiden edition. Actually, we are doing this one to test run before we start in full blown. Today, we expect two international personalities, but we are happy to have one of them with us. That is Mr. Melvin Body Baker. Melvin Bodbika is an experienced journalist, a copywriter, and a fact checker for a group of weekly magazine and newspaper for the beach communities and of Pinellas County, Florida, and downtown. He is a former managing editor of All Headlines News, and then was also a graduate of the University of South Florida at St. Petersburg, where he bagged a master's degree in journalism. Our guest today is a very experienced and well-traveled journalist. He has worked as a freelance reporter at the Tampa Bay area for the prestigious U.S. wire service, the United Press International. Today we are happy and glad to have Melvin Baker, popularly called Body, and is known for his attention to details and painstaking research capability, which has made him the go which has made him the go-to person for several publications, outlets, and firms in South Florida which are seeking freelance editorial service. Welcome, Mr. Melvin Baker. Welcome to this
Well,
Rock
thank you.
City
It's good.
Global Discourse.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Yes, the topic for thank you. The topic for this evening is want to look at the Pope advice, and we know that Pope was that is a Cardinal Robert Provost, a 69-year-old American missionary with deep ties to Peru, was elected as Pope Leo XIV. He is the first American to hold the papacy. Pope Leo XIV gave a strong message to world leaders. He urged them not to exploit people on the planet Earth. He called for leadership that promotes justice, peace, and care for the environment. Mr. Melvin, Mr. Body, I like to call it Body,
That's
if I'm
fine.
permitted.
Yes.
I want you to share your view. Do you think the leaders would still listen to the new Pope?
Well, I think that those leaders that are inclined uh, to listen to the Pope and his message will listen to his message. But there's certain people like President Trump and people he allies himself with, like Putin um, and the guy in North Korea. They're not really interested in uh, in that sort of thing.
Okay, but specifically, the U.S. president has been imposing sweeping tariffs on trading partners, and this has been creating issues across the globe. Do you think the U.S. is taking the Pope's advice, and if not, why?
Well, it's hard at this moment to speak about the United States in a corporate sense or a monolithic sense because the country's so divided now. There obviously Trump has his supporters and Trump has his opponents, and to many people, uh, what Trump has been doing, and in fact, just Trump's personal actions, um, are sort of diametrically opposed to whatever the Pope is doing. You know, the Pope Francis and the new one, Pope Leo, and their messages are pretty much
Okay, thank
diametrically opposed to each other. But there's many people in the United States who support the Pope and particularly the Pope's message. And although he's only been the Pope for a few weeks, we already know enough about him and his history to know the type of to have some sense of the type of Pope he's going to be. And I read recently on Facebook, one guy noted that the Pope had been embraced so quickly and readily and overwhelmingly because that was the type of person that people in the world needed today, as opposed to the hyper.
Yes, yes. I think I agree with the line of thought of Body, Mr. Baker. One of the things that we need to look at, when we consider this issue, is the fact that there's been a war, going in Ukraine. And then I
Yes,
remember that during the US election, Mr. Trump did say that once he's elected, he's going to talk to Putin and that there's going to be a stoppage, ceasefire, in Ukraine. But unfortunately, I'm not really sure that, has happened. And again, because, Mr. Trump has unleashed, a lot of tariffs, which is now creating economic problem all over the world. People are suffering. I'm really not sure those two actions have really helped the poor all over the world. I think one of the problems we have is to think that poor people are only in Africa, and I'm not sure that is really true. I think the poor people everywhere in the world, and it is very important if we begin to impress on our leaders to take the advice of people like the Pope to ensure that their policies have what is called human face, and then consider those who are not very wealthy. you know for me, it's unfortunate that Professor Lugo Okando hasn't joined us, because he should have a different perspective in this case. But I think the line of thought of Mr. Baker is quite correct, in my opinion.
Okay, doctor. Okay, sir. Thank you so much, Mr. Baker. Let me also get I want you to share your opinion on this. How far can you rate media participation in taking the advice of Pope to the world leaders?
well, I have kind of a skewed perspective on that because I believe that the job of journalism and journalists in large is to spread the truth and not to do as little harm in doing that as possible. And lots of times that truth is not comfortable to a lot of people, particularly Trump and other people like him. And the Pope spreads a different type of truth, more like a truth with a capital T. And I think that journalists, at least in the Western cultures, are more attuned to spreading a positive message, such as the Pope delivers, than many of our leaders who don't like that kind of message, who would rather use the press for their own purposes.
Okay, thank you. But when we look at the veracity of the message, we look at how popular this message is on the pages of newspaper across the world. One want to say that maybe journalists are not taking it that serious. Can we talk about agenda setting? Is there any way that you as an experienced journalist can make it more, what was it called, to have more impact, so that some world leaders will know that this message is more than what they are taking it before?
Well, I think the way to have that journalist can have more impact is just simply to stick with the truth. When Trump and others fabricate information, the point that the press should point out that he's fabricating that information. He's very good with that sort of thing, and there's obviously some people in America who like that message. But if you're going to be, if you listen to, if you care what the Pope is saying, then if you're not a Christian, you're certainly a moral person. And whatever the Pope says, it carries a moral message, and it carries moral weight because it comes from someone has a position of authority in the religious world. And I think I've lost my train of thought, but and journalists also do their best, and sometimes it's a sensational message, and sometimes it's
yeah,
but still,
yeah.
still
Yes, I think that is quite true. Is it what happened is that as journalists, we're not supposed to be, immerse ourselves in the stories. We are supposed to be neutral, But the truth of the matter is that there's no way you're going to be neutral, because for me, I believe that there's nothing like objectivity, So what we do is to ensure that what we're, publishing is the truth.
yes,
Is the truth, and then we have to. There's no way you're not gonna, take a side in the story. I think it's impossible. It is impossible, because we are human beings. We come from somewhere. We have certain, link, with our ethnicity, our nationality, and what have you. But the truth of the matter, like Mr. Baker did say, is that you see the powerful, of the world, they use the media, and then of course we begin hearing of late that there's something they call alternative truth. So I think part of the thing we need to do is to be conscientious, to show and that what we are doing, is for the good of the generality of the people, so that we can have a world that is peaceful, and then there could be stability, both political and economical.
yes.
Okay. Okay. Okay, Mr. Baker, I also want to learn from you. Reading your profile gave me a lot of insight that you have really immersed yourself in this work of journalism. Can you share your thoughts on why some journalists would prefer alternative to the truth and not the absolute truth?
Could you repeat that last sentence, please?
I said, could you share your thought on why some journalists prefer to opt for alternative to the truth and not the absolute truth?
Well, the absolute truth, as far as journalists are concerned, is very difficult to find. That's why when I speak of truth as a journalist, it's truth as a capital T. I mean, I'm sorry, truth with a lowercase t, because the truth is that it's the job of journalists to research, to talk to the right people, get the information, but you can never have everything. You can only have the truth as you're able to understand it, and that requires a lot of objectivity, not to insert for the journalist not to insert himself or herself into the story. Just just write down what what people tell you about a particular topic, present it to the public, and let them make up their own minds. But obviously, there are times that truth strikes at core values, and those core values are are found in various forms of morality and religion. And if the message that this person that you're speaking to, let's say a president, you feel strikes at those core values and is contrary to them, then I think it is your job as a journalist to point that out. You should challenge what they say in order to point out that there's just some things that are truthful and some things that are not. And in many cases, when you're talking specifically about President Trump, he just kind of lives in his old world. He makes stuff up and he says, "So and so told me this," but he never references it. And as long as a journalist can specifically quote somebody rather than say, "Oh, John down the street told me this," then they would be able to speak with authority, write with authority, broadcast with authority, because, and I suppose this is why journalists tend to speak to figures of authority when they're reporting news, with talking to the city council or the governor or whatever it might be, and then they have to, in their writing or their broadcast, they have to reflect on what those things are, what that person told them, and weigh it
Yeah,
against their own
yeah,
knowledge.
yeah. That's quite right. Particularly in our own climb, we try to, do what is called self-censorship. You know, and most of the
Mhm.
times, we have, we don't have the courage, to confront the authorities, even when we have, we unearth any, information, so we try to censor ourselves because of reprisal. You see, sometimes in our own climb, you could be killed, you could
Yes.
be imprisoned, and then, of
Yes.
course, pressures could be put on your employers to fire you,
Mhm.
and because of that kind of problems. So, a lot of journalists in Africa, are afraid, of speaking, writing the truth. So we just parrot what the authority says, which is quite problematic. Um,
Yes.
I don't know, but in Nigeria, even though we're in a democracy now, but a lot of people are afraid, to speak the truth. So everybody just clap, like they did say, he who pays the piper dictates the tune, So,
Yeah.
but hopefully, as we continue to grow, hopefully things, will change,
Yeah.
and I believe there's a possibility because if some of us continue to do what we're doing, there's a possibility that things, could change in the near future. But is if I want you to talk to this because what I found out of late is that even in America, a lot of people, journalists, a lot of organizations, fired their journalists, because they, uh, said things or published things that the authorities are not quite, like, and and then you hear a lot of things in America whereby, people are afraid, to say things that they think or they see that is wrong, and you have to play along, you join the multitude, So could you please talk to that for, a few minutes before we begin to round up?
You're addressing that question to me.
Yes.
Well, it's sort of an understanding in the journalism world that most reporters are Democrats and most of their publishers are Republican. And so generally that sort of ideological split doesn't really affect what's published. But we have seen instances, and recently the Washington Post, where they would kill stories because, or cartoons in some cases, because the publisher was at least rather cautious about offending Trump. And we also have a problem here that with the declining importance of professional journalism. Well, we've seen a decline in the number of print publications, and the growth of social media, which, as just about anybody can tell you, doesn't always have correct information. And there's a feeling that journalism is corrupt, that it's crooked, because of which obviously I don't feel that way, because I've been in this business since 1973, and it's not like I'm getting rich off of it. So, and there's also people who demonize the newspapers and journalists in large, hoping to diminish their credibility. And I don't know that I can speak for 2 minutes, but that's generally, to me, the core of the matter.
Thank you so much, Mr. Baker. Your parting shots really wanted to tilt towards advice to journalists to stick to truth and nothing but the truth.
Yes, that's at the core of their job. If that's all they do, they've done a lot. I think we've lost the sound.
I think Mr. Baker has really, we have to stick to the truth, no matter what, no matter whose source is God. And as he did say, I think journalism is different now from what was practiced, in the 70s, 80s, and what have you. So
Yes.
journalism is supposed to be rigorous. That rigorosity has been removed because now we tend towards entertainment, and alternative truth, and then a lot of misrepresentation and misinterpretation of news, which is actually doing damage, to our profession and to the world, because we are supposed to be the one that's supposed to hold leaders accountable, and we're not doing that. So I think this is why the advice of the Pope actually comes, into focus, because
Yes.
if we're able to hold leaders accountable, they will do the right thing. Then they do the right thing, there'll be peace. Where there's peace, there's going to be stability, both economic and political. And then the world will have a lot of rest. If you imagine how many people have been killed, in Ukraine and in other places, flashpoints where there's in Gaza, you wonder, why are we spilling this blood? For what reason? Then people have been killed, they have relations. Children are being killed and what have you. And I think we need to help, our society, our world to, bring an end to this so that we can have peace. People can move about, move around, and then we spread peace and love, not war. So I think, that should be it, from me.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much. It's good to have you, Mr. Baker.
Well, thank you for having me.
Hope subsequently, when we beckon on you, you also still grant our request.
Thank you very much. So God bless you. Next time.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. It was a great pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Bye.
Thank you, man.
Mr. Daoud.